welcome to the Home Care Strategy Lab. I'm your host, Miriam Allred. It's great to be back with everyone today. Today in the lab, I'm joined by the lovely Debbie Miller, who is the CEO of Senior Helpers in Franklin, Tennessee, and also the founder and CEO of 52 Weeks Marketing. Debbie, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Miriam. It's so good to be with you.
You and I have spent a lot of time together, but it's been a couple of months and you are busy and thriving and running several businesses. And so I thought we've got to catch up and hear about kind of the latest and greatest for your businesses. So before we jump into the topic, some listeners may not know you as well as others. So I love to have you share your background about what you were up to pre-home care and then starting your own home care business, and then the following businesses that have kind of stemmed off of your own experience. So let's start there.
Sure. Well, thanks very much for having me. I love getting together and having a chat with you and certainly sharing some experiences that I've had in home care. Prior to home care, and first and foremost, I am an agency owner. Started Senior Helpers in 2008, started from scratch. I think we opened the doors with 10 caregivers and we now have almost 500 caregivers. But before that, I worked as a product director for a big pharmaceutical company. So worked in big pharma, supported, hundreds of reps across the country. Worked on huge brand launches like Celebrex, many of you are probably aware of, lines of women's health care and arthritis medications. So what was awesome about that experience, though, is I really learned about how to target and how important targeting is, and reach and frequency. So reaching the right people, seeing them often enough, and influencing them in a way that kept our phone ringing, right? In that case, it was for our drug being prescribed. In the home care space, it's our phone ringing for our services. So I was able to apply a lot of that experience to the home care business. And when I started, I was out there pounding the pavement like many of you myself for the first 2 years before I hired my first marketer. But during that time, I was able to create the 52 weeks methodology and system. And to this day, we use it. My team uses it. And now many, many other home care owners across the country are using 52 weeks as well. So it's been quite a journey. And as you said, I've been able to parlay a lot of that experience from my home care agency into businesses like 52 weeks. And we'll talk a little bit about Helper Heroes as well, which is our latest endeavor, because as we are supporting agency owners across the country, we start to see what their pain points are, the same pain points as we've had. So as I've resolved some of these issues, then we're able to bring new solutions to folks out there experiencing the same kinds of things.
You and I are always drawn to each other because we're both educators. You and I both take a very education first approach, and you are just incredible at sharing firsthand experience, the good, the bad, the ugly of your own business with other owners, which I think is so powerful. And traditionally, I think most of the times that I've interviewed you or we talk, we're talking about the boots on the ground sales. That is your bread and butter. You've done it yourself. You've trained your team. You're helping hundreds of other home care businesses implement that methodology. But today we're going to shift gears a little bit. You yourself have introduced virtual assistants, VAs, to your home care business over the last year or so. And I'm fascinated by that. I see a lot of companies kind of tinkering. I see a lot of VA companies coming on the scene. It's kind of up and coming right now. And you told me that you currently have 7 virtual assistants in your own office. And I thought, let's dig into that. I want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly of implementing this inside of your own business. So that's what we're going to focus on again, which is kind of a different topic for you, but also very top of mind and very relevant. So let's get into it. I want to just start by setting the stage and share with everyone how many office staff you have without the VAs, and then about how many weekly billable hours your home care business is doing.
Right. And I will correct you on something, Miriam. I've been using offshore workers or virtual assistants for about 3 years now. So I've had a lot of experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly, which we'll talk about. So just wanted to correct that. But I am billing about 8,000 hours a week currently. Have about 25 full-time employees in our office, 2 part-time, and then 7 virtual assistants. Bolstering our infrastructure at a much reduced rate has been such an incredible opportunity where we've been able to take so much of the weight off some of the shoulders of our staff with on call, which we'll talk through. Where we are now is we're in a very good place. We're in a very stable place, but it was a little bit of a rocky road to get there. So I'll share some of the things that we've learned for sure along
Yeah,
the way.
let's talk a little bit about, 3 years ago, what was the initial thinking? Were you exposed to VAs via some other business or some other industry, or did someone on the team say, "Hey, we should try this"? Like, what was the initial starting point for you all looking into VAs?
I think we got cold called by an agency that did the staffing for virtual assistants. And I loved the concept because of the cost savings more than anything. But also at that time, which was just after COVID, we had a very hard time getting a solid team and that, actually wanted to work in the office because, we had so many people that kind of got used to working from home. And when we started to reel people back in, it was really hard. We had a lot of turnover in our operational staff, and it caused a lot of issues. Of course, so, it's really hard to when you don't have a consistent staff. Your clients are upset. Your service goes down. Caregivers aren't happy. The recruiting was a whole other situation, which the VAs really helped us with that as well. Anyway, so my main issue was the wage inflation that we were dealing with. Every time we lost somebody, when we went to rehire, they're wanting five, seven, $10,000 more a year, just in a matter of months. So it just became so unaffordable to really build the infrastructure that we needed for our size. So we needed to do something, and so we started working with the first agency. And there's as much training that goes into onboarding a virtual assistant as it does if you're hiring somebody in your office. So we would invest all of this training, and then we were seeing as much turnover with our virtual assistants as we did in the office, which was really frustrating, and it defeated the purpose, which was why we offshored in the first place. So we had to really resolve that. And so we had, again, just a lot of ups and downs. We invest all this time. We would fall in love with this person. They become really part of the team. And the next thing you know, they've got another opportunity. And so when I really got to the bottom of what was going on with the agencies, and then we started working with some other agencies. That particular one that we started with was sourcing talent from Colombia. And then we started working with folks that were sourcing from Africa. And we've also worked with people that are sourcing from India. And so we kind of ran into the same kinds of issues with a lot of turnover. We had some issues with people not very happy with accents, that kind of thing, because it's an adjustment, right, for people to in this space in particular, where it's not a common thing. It's getting more common, obviously, but it wasn't a common thing to have somebody that wasn't there in the office answering the phone and dealing with issues and things like that. So those were some of the things that we were dealing with.
Okay, a lot to unpack here. And I love how honest and upfront you're being because we're going to talk about language and country and culture. Like, those are huge factors in this equation. And so we're going to talk a lot about each of those. Let's talk about your 7 VAs. I want to actually start here because I'm so curious exactly what each of them do. But first, what was your first VA hired to do? Was it scheduling, billing, after hours on call? Like, what was your first VA hire
We
and what
actually
were they doing?
hired two right out of the gate recruiters. And why we did that was because and by the way, before we hired the two VAs, we had four people working in HR. So we streamlined our whole process and we implemented an engagement platform that had less human touch points using technology, which streamlined the whole process to begin with. So there was a combination of technology as well as offshore workers. So what we did is, and as a result, we were able to go from 4 full-time people to 2 virtual assistants. So you can imagine the significant savings, wage savings there. But also what happened was when you have folks that are just focused on these tasks, not being pulled into these other areas, putting out a fire over here but they're where they are, they're working from where they are, and they are just solely focused on interviews. We do back to back every 15 minutes we're doing interviews. And they're able to do that because the minute they start, they get on the phone, they hit the phone, and it's a go. Versus when your staff comes in, they talk to somebody, they get a coffee, they do this, then there's some sort of fire over here and everybody starts brainstorming on how to fix this. And then what happens? 2 hours go by and we haven't been recruiting. So that completely changed, where we now are using a technology, we start interacting with applicants, and then this whole calendar is filled up. And somebody's got to be managing those. And so we have two people that are just doing that. And so the accent was a problem. We live in Tennessee. We have a lot of Southern folks, and they really struggled with understanding that. At that time, our recruiters were Colombians with very heavy Spanish accents. And so what we did is over time, we moved to sourcing from the Philippines. And the accent of the folks, not only that, they were able to really problem solve. The task of a recruiter is a real sales position. Now you're selling them into your company. You're trying to recruit them. They may be working for several other agencies. So it's it's a sales position. And the Filipinos they were a little bit more strategic. They could kind of read between the lines because they're very Americanized. TV, they know our idioms. We're able to think on their feet. And I would say, they're just literally like, they think like we do. That's my only way of trying to articulate it. Where other cultures are very different. They maybe wouldn't push the envelope a little bit like Americans will. Like, we'll kind of not be pushy, but take it to the next step, like, try to really lure them into, no, hey, you sound like the perfect candidate for our organization, and be able to do that versus just reading a script. Which is what we had in the first round. So we had the two recruiters, and we still have them to this day. And then we hired the schedulers. So we hired a team of schedulers since we were really struggling with keeping schedulers in our office. And so that was, and we just had some ups and downs with that. Again, not being able to retain them. Obviously, we all know how challenging scheduling is. Some could really grasp it. And so it's you've got to find the right person. And if it's not the right person, let them go quickly and move on. So even though you may have invested, like what we would do is do a trial run, and you really test the person out, have them hear a couple of calls, answer a couple of calls, make sure that was a good fit for us. But where we really struggle, and what we really did when I did some analysis and did some digging, the reason that we weren't able to retain the folks was because of the wages that they're paid by these agencies. They're paid very, very low wages. Like, I'm talking sometimes $1.50 to $2.50. So anytime another opportunity came, and they work across many different business verticals. So there's a lot of opportunities. There might be a bank, there might be a call center that is competing with us. There were a lot of technology companies that were grabbing these people and even maybe offering 25 cents more, 15 cents, 25 cents more. When you're making less than $2 or making $2 an hour, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. So when I discovered that and understood why, you can't blame them for going to another opportunity, right? But that really registered with me from a long-term standpoint. This is going to be an ongoing problem. So when we'll talk about Helper Heroes, we took a completely different approach and a completely different model so that the virtual assistants get most of the money. Most of the money is going to them, so that they never want to lose their job. They want to stay with you and grow with you and be this long-standing employee. At the end of the day, they want to be with an American company. That's what we've learned, especially with the Filipinos. They love this. They think of themselves as quasi-American. So to work with an American company is seen as a real privilege. And when they're able to make fair wages, wages that put them at the top of the wage bracket in that country, it changes lives. So it's a kind of a win-win. But it took us really understanding, and that's something that I would recommend, that if somebody is considering hiring an agency to staff a virtual assistant for them, what are you paying? What wages are you paying? They don't like to talk about it, but at the end of the day, it's something they'll answer if you really push them on it.
Okay, so you mentioned that you started with recruiting. That was a function that you needed help on. You mentioned having standardized SOPs before bringing in the virtual assistants. That sounds important, like an important part here, because if you bring a virtual assistant into messy operation where things are already a little all over the board, they're going to come into that chaos and they're not necessarily going to be able to move the needle if things are kind of haywire. So it sounds like that's an important prerequisite to bringing in a VA to be effective, is you need to make sure that that area of the business is streamlined, organized, has like a very standard SOP that the VA can come into. I want to ask about the scheduling VAs specifically. So you said you brought in, I think, two VAs to help with scheduling. Were they supporting other schedulers that are in the office? Yes or no? It sounds like a yes. And then are their roles the exact same, or are the VA schedulers supplementing some of the existing responsibilities of the in office schedulers?
Good questions. Our goal was to, I mean, ultimately, if it had worked out, my thought was we're going to offshore all scheduling and then have client service managers in the office that could go out to different, go out to homes if they needed to. But my ultimate goal was to offshore it all. So we started with two. And what we did is we broke our business into two zones. So I have a pretty vast geography. And so we would have, say two territories in one zone. Think about it that way. Office person was the lead over the zone, but they would work together as a team. So, but my ultimate goal was we would probably get to the point where, we would, and we were always training somebody. So there was always this floater kind of thing. And, so we could plug another person in if we had to. We didn't get there. We just couldn't get there. And so what we ended up doing was we now have 3 full-time schedulers in our office. Now, part of the reason that we couldn't keep a scheduler was because of the on-call portion of the job, which is, in my case, because we're a large organization, it's a pretty big deal. Weekends are nonstop. And so what we ended up doing was we streamlined our whole approach to this. We had 3 full-time people. We still have our zones, but we have two scheduling coordinators that are answering the phones, that are dealing with the call outs, that are watching the dashboard and responding to any, say, late folks or no call, no shows and things like that, so that our schedulers can focus on scheduling our new cases, our client and caregiver management. So they're kind of dealing with all the fires to the 2 folks that we have right now. And then our schedulers are managing the scheduling, the new clients and all of those kinds of things. What's really amazing is we have 3 people that handle all after hours and on call. So our staff are absolutely off. After, when they leave at 4:30, they are off until the next morning, and they don't have to do on call on the weekends. So how we got to that place was, first of all, we trained everybody to be schedulers. So everybody that's on call are really good schedulers. All right, so they're trained. They work as a very cohesive team with the daytime team. They're literally like team members. I mean, they feel like they're as part of the team as anybody in our organization, as though they're sitting in the office next door. They are on our team meetings. So what they do is, between the 3 of them, they will they start at 5 a.m. and they pass the baton to our scheduling team at 8 a.m. and they come back on at 4:30. And they're straight through till 9 p.m. So this is really interesting. Well, what a lot of people did and what we did before when we had our on-call team and we struggled with this, like, why can't we get this on-call team to be a solid team and to really take the pressure off our folks? They'd be constantly calling because they couldn't deal with things. Well, what happened was when you're staffing 24/7, a lot of these agencies will have 4 people dedicated to you, working 4, 6, 8 hour shifts. So they never really get to know the clients and the caregivers,
Mhm.
right? Like somebody who's a true scheduler. So what happened was instead of paying somebody 24 hours to man my phones, when I did the analysis, we never got calls. Our last shift ends at 7 p.m. So strategically, when you're thinking about this, look at your phones. When do you really get your issues? They're going to happen typically before that last shift. If there's a call off, you got to deal with it. So our last shifts in our case end at 7. Sometimes we'll have at 8 o'clock or whatever, and we would probably change. If we had a lot of 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, we may have to change this. But we would stop our on-call goes off at 9. So we've got 2 hours in there. If anybody called off, there were any issues for that 7 o'clock shift, they're dealing with it. If somebody calls to call off for the next day, typically they'll call before 9 p.m. So they end at 9, and then we just, for any kind of emergencies, we have a phone answering system, like an answering service. Very, very reasonably priced versus paying somebody 24 hours a day. It's not necessary when you really do the analysis. Okay. So, but they're getting on early enough at 5 a.m. so that those 7 a.m. shifts, any call offs, they're dealing with them already. They've already got them staffed. So by the time your staff gets there in the morning, all of those things have been taken care of. They get a complete debrief and report of what happened, and then the day staff go on with their day. So this happens during the week, after hours, and then on weekends as well. In my case, because of my volume, we have 2 full-time people on Saturday and Sunday. So that's how the hours work. So between the 3 of them, they're doing after hours and weekend, and they overlap. So somebody will get on at 5 and leave, say, at 2. Somebody will start at 7 and leave at 9, kind of thing. So it's really looking strategically at where the issues are, even on the weekends. When are the bulk of the calls? Or you might need 2 people. Maybe you have, 2 part-time people on Saturday and Sunday. However that looks for you, that's the way to think about it. But our goal was to alleviate the pressure on our daytime staff. And since we've been doing this, we have had no turnover on our scheduling team. They love it. They love their support team. And life is good. Life is a better place than scheduling now.
I love how analytical this is, Debbie. This is why I love talking to you and people gravitate towards you is because you know how to look at the numbers. I think a lot of businesses think we need someone in office during our working hours and then we'll just have that answering service for the remainder of the hours. But I love how you've broken this down to the next level of VAs, in office VAs, and then answering service. It's like it sounds complex, but the way that you've broken it down makes a lot of sense and it sounds like everybody's happy. It's working
It's a
really
lot,
well.
it's actually a lot less complex because you have fewer hands in the pot.
Hmm.
And they know their on-call team. The caregivers get to know them. There are VA agencies that have a rotation. So you literally never know who you're going to get. They might be sharing a virtual assistant with 5, 8 different agencies. So you don't get to know them and they don't get to know the caregivers and the clients. And that's been my experience firsthand. Our clients and our caregivers do not know that the people answering the phone are not in our office. They have no idea.
And you're alleviating so much stress of your in-office team. I love that early morning VA shift
Yes.
that is already tackling issues, already thinking ahead, already being proactive before the day actually starts. Because I hear so much from office teams. They come into the office and it is just like boom, 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 fire after fire. And it's just like so hot and heavy for like the first several hours of the day. But I imagine those VAs alleviate a lot of that stress so the people coming into the office to start their day can breathe and look at things and assess things before they really have to get into it.
We've had schedulers who say, I can't even take a shower because the phone hasn't stopped ringing until the rest of their teammates get there. Then they shower and get in the car. Like they're literally stuck at home till 10 o'clock until we were able to get on top of it. That doesn't happen anymore. I mean, they come in, everybody's happy. It's a high five kind of environment versus a dread to go to work environment. And we don't want that for our people. I mean, and it's burnout, high burnout. And it's no wonder people don't stay.
Yes, exactly. We both know there's so much burnout and so much turnover in that scheduler seat. And so we've got to find creative ways, like having virtual assistants assist them so that they can feel confident and happy and be successful in that role and not burn out and be turning over in 6 months or a year. The last I think bucket of VAs, you do have some helping with billing, correct?
Yes.
You do a lot of LTC and VA, and so you have designated VAs that help with billing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we actually have a full-time VA that does our long-term care billing. That's been a real focus for us and a growth opportunity for our business. So they do, and it's getting more complex dealing with these carriers, these insurance carriers. They're getting so much more demanding. They're now, they have each one of them has their own portal and their own way of for us to submit the documentation to them. And so it's a full-time job just, trying to keep that all straight. And of course, on the agency side, we want to take a lot of that burden off our clients by providing that service where we're communicating with whether we're doing an assignment of benefits or not. You certainly want to be submitting the paperwork and doing everything on your part so that your client gets paid in a timely manner. Well, that's easier said than done. It is one person's full-time job to be sure that we're submitting those timesheets, that everything aligns with the care plan, and is in accordance with the way the policy is written. Otherwise, we could get some delays and our clients the payments can be delayed. So it's really a great opportunity, and it's with what we're able to pay them, it makes a lot of economic sense to have somebody dedicated to doing that versus either burdening your finance person or yourself. A lot of owners were doing this, and this is like a big challenging job, especially as you grow in your number of insurance clients. Again, VA, it's just a piece of VA or a piece of the billing you can take off your billing people and they can handle it. So we're
I was
able to
gonna
do
ask,
all of that with one person.
wow. So I was gonna ask, do you have a CFO and anybody else that's touching billing, or what does your billing team look like?
Yeah, we do. We have one person that's doing everything else.
Okay, so just two people. It's kind of the main and then the VA that is doing, it sounds like kind of a lot of like the
Yes,
legwork, the manual paperwork, claims, checking in on
exactly.
shifts. Okay.
We
Yeah,
have
this
one other
is
person that's in there that has to do with Medicaid that's very specific to Tennessee. It's actually changing in August. We're so excited. We had 4 managed care organizations, each with their own VVV system. So it meant our caregiver signing in on, say, WellSky, but having to know 3 other EVVs. So there was a lot of confusion. So we had one person dedicated to just monitoring all of those dashboards for our Medicaid piece of the business. And that goes away in August, and we are so excited.
I think a perfect topic to segue into is training these people because that
Yes.
is key. Like I'm thinking in my head, getting this VA up and running on LTC and VA, like that is super intense and a lot of headaches for your even in-office people. So let's talk about training. What didn't maybe work so well that you tried at the beginning, and then how has your training process evolved, and what are you guys doing now that's working well?
You said it earlier, it's a clearly defined process. So, and scheduling is tough to, you know, for workflow, like you really documenting, and the more documented it is, where they can refer to a document, the better it is. Like, okay, I have a call off, check one, got to call the client and let them know, and all the steps. So is it just are having all of those, that workflow in a document is very, very helpful. Clearly defining their role and articulating what your expectations of them are. We did a video when we first started with our VAs to tell them about who we are. I just like recorded it, did some PowerPoints, like who we are as an organization, what's important to us, what's important to clients when we're talking to them. What are the motivating factors that are working behind the scenes. Same with the family, totally different factors, right? They have different issues, different things are going to be important to them. And then the caregiver as well. So what's important to your caregiver? What do you want to avoid saying? They're very non-confrontational. Like I would share with them the caregiver persona and then how to deal with that and how to talk to them in a way that's going to support them and not to alienate them. And just to so they feel like they're just the best communication skills as possible. So all of those like things that we might take for granted are going to be really important to instill in them. So clearly defined process, helping them really understand the business, home care in general, and all the customers being your client, your family, and the caregiver, and then holding them accountable when you set the clear expectations, be checking on them. Like you really need somebody managing them and making sure that all of the, everything is being satisfied. But when it comes to the training piece, that's what we really had to learn, like virtual training.
Mhm.
And we've gotten really good at it. In our operation, we use Ring Central. And it's mainly like, it's just like Zoom, where we have them on the call just like today. And we're showing them and sharing screen. We would have them working alongside our schedulers day in and day out for like a good couple of weeks so that they're just watching, listening, hearing how we handle, because every day in scheduling is a different day in scheduling. Like you cannot share the scenarios on a document. It's like it's just repetition until okay, yeah, I'll remember when that happened that time when, the caregiver's car broke down and we had to schedule an Uber or whatever it was. I mean, every day is a new scenario that has to be problem solved and resolved. And so it takes time. And that would be a major recommendation that I would make, and to have your expectations where you're going to invest like it for a scheduling role. It's a good month of investing in training, at least. So that's something that you want to factor in. That's going to be an additional cost as you're working and training them alongside your scheduler, or whatever it is. But to truly have somebody who can lift that burden off your folks, they've got to be able to rely on them, and they've got to know as much as they possibly can. Being prepared to do virtual training, record the training, and then send them the recording. We're very good at referring to recordings. That's a really good way for them to learn. So if you're going to train them on your operations system, well, Sky as an example, do little video clips and create a library so that when you hire your next person, you've got all that ready to go, and it'll save you time. So you only want to invest in training once, record everything, so that your next training is going to be so much easier.
And it sounds like your existing team was the one doing these kind of Ring Central meetings with them. I'm curious, this was new to those team members. They probably hadn't trained VAs before. Was there any kind of grumblings or gripes or anyone that was kind of pushing back against it? And if so, how did you deal with that? Or was your team kind of excited to offload tasks? Like, so I'm just curious what your office team thought about this process.
It was onerous for them. Yeah, especially because we had so much turnover. And then it was like, oh my goodness, back to the drawing board. Here I go again. So that's when we got smart about doing the recordings. And also we had higher level trainers get involved earlier, so that by the time they got to the schedulers where it was really getting down to the everyday nitty gritty of doing the job, they had a much more basic understanding. Like we would do a well Sky training. And, we have a particular person in my organization that was really good at that. Like is a really good trainer. Not all your schedulers are going to be the best trainers. So you'll find over time who the good trainers are. Initially though, they're excited because they want the support. They want this person to be successful because they're going to be either their potential teammate, or they're going to be covering for them when they're not on. So they become their advocate, and they'll want to invest in that because at the end of the day, it's going to help them. So helping them see that is going to be helpful too. You don't want them to see it as a threat. That's important. So that's something to articulate. Look, I'm investing in this person to support you. You may, even if they're a good manager type, you'll be managing them. They will that's kind of music to some people's ears, other people not good managers. So you got to know that. Hey, is this person going to be a good manager? Because you don't want it to impact the virtual assistant in a negative way either. Especially if you find somebody that's fantastic. You want to make them as excited about being part of your team as you are having them. So that's something to think about. You and be watching how the training is going. I mean, as an owner, if you have the time, it's great if you can do that. Know who your trainers are within your organization. It may take you a minute. We've got it so fine tuned now that, and again, the recordings have really, really helped us.
Are you doing a daily stand up with the VAs and your office team, or what does your meeting structure look like that includes them?
Yes, and we have weekly meetings that they attend. Also, we have a dashboarding meeting that the scheduling coordinators will be part of. We have a business development meeting that we have on Mondays. We review all of our incoming clients, new clients, how are they going? And they're involved in those. And then the morning pass off meeting. So we have 2 meetings a day. They're present during the morning meeting, the first morning meeting, and then the afternoon meeting that again, they're passing the baton back to them. So it's sort of like a full loop. We close the loop with them, how the day went, what they need to know going into the evening. Maybe
Okay.
there's open shifts that still haven't been filled that they're going to continue to work on.
Okay. And accountability is such a key factor here. It's important with people in office and virtual assistants, but keeping people accountable and giving them metrics that can be tracked and measured and then improved upon. Are you tracking accountability metrics in WellSky, or do you guys have a spreadsheet or a separate tool, or how does everyone keep track of those accountability metrics?
One of the things is the calls. In Ring Central, you can monitor calls. You'll see, we know how long our calls, anybody's waiting for a call. That's a key metric is, we've got to get that call within 3 rings. Um, and that that they were able to handle the call. All right. If they weren't able to handle the call, what training do you need so that you don't have to pass that call? Because then that's taking time away from the scheduler. So anything that you weren't able to handle, they'll document so that we can do further training. And we were literally training them on things every single day in that first month. This came up. I didn't know really how to deal with that. Or if a call came, if a transfer had to come to a scheduler, they were documenting that. We're documenting any canceled shifts. That's a big KPI. If you weren't able to staff a case, why? And we're looking at that. We're tracking anybody that bonuses. If you have to give a bonus, we don't want to give a bonus. So do you need some skills in salesmanship? Those kinds of things. Even Uber. How are you handling Uber? So one of the things that we do is with Ring Central. Again, every single call that comes into our office is recorded, and we're reviewing the calls. And of course, we have our client services managers who are talking to our clients. If there are any issues, we hear about them and we deal with them.
Yeah, so just training, training, training. And the theme that I'm picking up is you treat them as if they were in the office. It's
Yes,
as in depth, as thorough, as integrated as if they were a new hire. It's just that they're in another country. But it's literally like you treat them as if you were bringing them on full time in-house.
exactly. Exactly. The more you invest, the more you get out. What I love is they're very, very bright. They're college educated. They're strategic minded. And that's what you want. You need problem solvers. You need people that are self-starters. They could take the initiative. They can make decisions. When we were working with, particularly with the Colombians, they could not make a decision. They were so nervous. This is where I mean about culture. And so that's not helping if you have to call me. Instead of me getting the call, you're calling me and now having to transfer a call. So that's not productive. That's something that you really want to look for and hire for is folks that and ask them to give you some examples of where they've had to make tough decisions. Many of them are coming from other work verticals. Like what I like to look for are people that worked with new businesses that were the owner's right-hand person. There are a lot of people out there. It's really interesting. Different vertical, of course, but they wore a lot of hats. And of course, in our industry, especially with scheduling, it's very multitasking. You've got your call coming in, you've got to deal with this, you've got to call Mrs. Jones back and let her know, okay, so-and-so's coming in place of Mary. and then, got to close the loop and then get on to the next thing. So that those are tasks that you've got to really hire for somebody that can handle a lot of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you make. I'm thinking of like executive assistants, someone that's been kind of like a virtual assistant or an executive assistant to a CEO, meaning the CEO needs help and just wants to offload all of those other kind of manual tasks, calls, responsibilities. They would make really good home care VAs because that's the nature of home care. I want to talk about pay. You referenced it earlier. You mentioned kind of the $1 to $2 an hour. To be totally honest, that's lower than I was anticipating, even just you saying those numbers. And you mentioned that you all will talk about Helper Heroes, but pay quite a bit more than that. Can you just talk a little bit about pay specifically? And you've worked with other agencies, and so you know what you're paying them, and you may or may not know what they're paying the VAs. But can you kind of break down some of those rates and explain why you all are doing the pay portion differently?
Right. This is the biggest deal for sure. And when we launched Helper Heroes, we created the model with this whole concept in mind that we wanted to have most of the pay go to the virtual assistants so that obviously you're going to be happier when you're making more, and if no one else is paying that, they're going to stay with us. Yeah, when they're making $2 an hour. So our partner that we have in the Philippines, our business partner, Dylan and my business partner, her name is Seldy. For years, like I'm talking 10 years, she was a virtual assistant with several different agencies. And the most she made was $2 an hour. The most she made. This woman is an engineer by trade. She is the most process driven I mean, she's fabulous for us as a partner. We're so blessed to have met her. And we met her because she was actually looking for opportunities privately, because I think she just was tired of being taken advantage of this way. She, I think, caught wind of what these folks were billing. And when she saw the, tiny little fraction that was coming to her, I think she got frustrated and did that. So anyway, we connected with her, and so our model was we wanted to pay them a wage higher, and we pay 3 to 4 times the normal rate, to where they're making the kind of money that, high level professionals are making in the Philippines. We source from the Philippines because of the things that I talked about. Their accent is much more pleasing and more acceptable to our clients and our caregivers for whatever reason. I think there's a sort of a sweetness to their voice. They sound really sweet, and they're very helpful in nature. It kind of comes across in their voice, for lack of a better way to describe it. And again, because they are so Americanized, they just seem to gel much better with our culture, and certainly my corporate culture. Seldy's culture that she's creating with the VAs in the Philippines is just like Dylan and mine. We're all about helping our clients. We want to be as involved as possible. In our case, we want them to be able to focus on growth and have the operations taken care of by a solid team that they can count on. And so the way that we thought to do that was, let's pay them more. We make less. We charge a flat fee, very, very affordable. It's not even any more than you'd pay for any other agency. We're just making less on the business side of things. Like, these companies must be making billions of dollars when you think about what they're actually paying their poor VA. So it's worked out really well. And what's amazing is people are flocking to us. Literally, they're leaving other agencies, and Selby is nonstop interviewing, and amazing talent.
And I love that you call it Helper Heroes because if I'm not mistaken, the hero component is you all are heroes to these individuals in the Philippines. You want them to have a high quality of life. You want them to make a livable wage. You don't want them making that bare minimum so that you're profiting here in the US. You want them to truly be sustained and happy, and then it's a win-win. They're happy, you're happy, and your business is thriving.
It's a win-win for sure. They're your hero because they're helping you take off some of the load. But yeah, for sure. I mean, we have stories every single week. I have goosebumps just as I'm talking about it, of the lives that are changed through, I mean, you can imagine if you're going from $2 an hour to $8 an hour, what that means to somebody in that country. And every single day we have stories of people. We had a gal whose house was hit by a typhoon something like 5 years ago. And they were just sort of piecemealing it back together over all those years. And in 2 months that she was with us, she was able to start literally rebuilding her house. We have others where their kids are able to go to better schools. I mean, on and on. I mean, and Seldy has weekly meetings with her team and she shares them. And Dylan and I are just like, they were so excited.
And we know the margins are tight here and the labor market is challenging. And so I just love the contrast of like our reality here that we're facing and we're dealing with and we're trying to figure out. And then this opportunity that exists for these individuals. Like I just love the contrast and just the marrying of these two very different challenges coming together to kind of solve that together. On this show, I like to ask people for formulas, like get prescriptive and tell us like why this is working for your business. And you have outlined kind of 6 things that will make successful strategic VA integration in your business. So after everything we've talked about, what are the 6 key ingredients to make sure that you could be successful in integrating VAs into your business?
Yes, the first one is clearly defined role. As I said earlier, when we with Helper Heroes, the first thing we do is a discovery call where we really help the owner tap into where your gaps are, what are your challenges, and then out of that, clearly define a role that we can now go and source a talent for. So sometimes I just was on a call with a gal earlier today who said, I want my team to do more strategic tasks. So take off some of these menial tasks. But what I want to do first is highlight all the more the higher level tasks that they're going to take off my plate as the owner. I want to define that first. And then what can I take off their plate so that they can do that? And then that's the role. So, sometimes it'll be, clearly it'll be a recruiter. It'll clearly be a scheduler. It'll clearly be a bill. It might be more of an executive assistant, right? So whatever that role is, that needs to be really clearly defined. That's the first step. Second one is having a robust training and onboarding process, like we just talked about. Who is going to be the trainer? All right, can you afford to have them do that for the next 2 weeks? In our case, it was, we parceled it out to different people that have really good skills in a particular area. We would, they might spend day one with this person, day two with this person. I've got a big team, so we can do that. Might be you as an owner. Well, who's going to cover you while you're doing this? So, but that's something that we really need to think about and have that process in place. The next thing is dedicated oversight. Who's going to manage this person? They love feedback. They're very good at taking feedback. It's amazing. They'll be like, what can I do better? They're very, very open. And again, because they're focused on keeping their job, they want to keep you happy. So, but having that dedicated oversight, making sure that they are meeting the KPIs, that they are, the clients and caregivers are satisfied. A reliable staffing partner, whoever is sourcing the talent for you, do they understand home care? Are they going to be able to give you talent that is going to be dedicated to you? And, sometimes there are folks that are working for 2 or 3 different other companies, and we didn't want that. We wanted people that are going to be dedicated to this owner, go with the owner. That's our whole motto. Consistent communication, that's important. Like there's a certain number of credentialing that they've got that you're going to have to put in place, whether it's the WellSky or the Access credentialing. They're going to need an email. They're going to need a phone. You've got to have a phone system so that the phone number that they're calling from looks like a local phone number. So those things that you need to get in place, but you want to have some clear communication that they can be successful and who they're having to communicate with, caregivers and etc. And then finally, the accountability, which we've kind of talked about, but accountability is key. And touching base with them, like asking them, what do you need from me to be more successful? Having, a weekly meeting with just a one-on-one. You know what's been really cool for us is getting, when you get a fresh set of eyes who have a really good educated mind and strategic mind, we've had a lot of ideas come from our VAs, which we didn't really expect that. But this time around with the Filipinos that we've got in place, they're so smart, and they've had a lot of great suggestions because they're in it with us, right? And they're attending the meetings and they have a voice. So giving them a voice is really key, and they may see some things that you're not seeing. By the way, a lot of them have had so much experience with other verticals that maybe had a really good way of doing things that we haven't thought about because we're so myopic in this home care space. So they may have worked with an executive that maybe whatever they did. Hey, I did PowerPoint. Have you ever thought about doing your training and orientation virtually? We did it this way, that kind of thing. So those are the key things that I think are important for success.
I love it. That was a perfect overview of how to set these people up for success in your own business. And I love that last point that you're making, that these people come from education and from varied backgrounds. And the other thought is they also are likely exposed to senior care in their own country in some shape, form. And so they just have these perspectives, they have this experience, and they're going to come and bring that to your business, which is so rich, which is just such a great opportunity to give them that voice and hear them out and hear what they bring to the table and what they bring to your operation. Debbie, you have been in home care for what, 15, 18 years? A long
Years.
time, but you are still so in it. And you're also likely thinking about the future of your business, the future of home care. And I want to hear your take on the future of VAs in home care. Again, I've seen it on the rise the last couple of years, but I think the interesting element is also technology is speeding up and AI is coming on the scene. And some people may think that, oh, AI is going to take over a lot of the minutia out of my business. And so I'm just curious of your kind of honest take on like technology and VAs and what you see the future kind of looking like.
I think they go hand in hand, honestly. The technology takes as many of the human touches out. You're still going to have human touches. I mean, think about senior care in general. I don't know that AI is ever going to resolve personal care. You're going to still have to have caregivers and doing that, and that thank goodness for us, right? We still have a business. But streamlining the processes is key. Think about the day when maybe one scheduler, whether it's somebody in the office or an offshore person, because of AI who's spooling up, recommendations for caregivers for a call off. I mean, that's going to be amazing. So I think we're looking, and it needs to happen because the wage inflation is such that the margins are getting lower and lower for the home care owners. I mean, I'm billing more and making less than ever because of wage inflation and caregiver wages too, right? Seniors can only handle so much. Payer sources are only willing to pay so much. So our margins are tending to come down. So anywhere we can save money and where we can streamline processes to make it easier on the people that we have here in the office, along with virtual workers that can, fit in a place that, that any of those gaps that make things more affordable and just more manageable. So I think there's a place for both. I'm very excited about AI for us to not have to make 1,000 calls for, somehow technology goes out and the caregiver says, yeah, hey, I heard Mrs. Jones has got an opening. I want it. Would be, I'm sure we're not far from that. And again, profitability is key. We've got a lot of new owners, a lot of competition. And so, I was saying to somebody the other day, when I started 18 years ago, I think it was easier. There was less competition, and I don't know. Because we work with so many new owners, and it's just, you've got to find ways to differentiate yourself. That's why marketing is so important, right? You've got to be out there marketing. So the more you can be saving and building your infrastructure, I didn't have this opportunity to build my infrastructure this way. And it would have been, I can't even imagine how many hundreds of thousands of dollars we would have saved. But for new owners, this is actually, I think, a really good way to begin to build your infrastructure. And we see, 1 and 2 man shows here. So it's a really common thing. So if one person's out doing the marketing, and you need to be because the competition is so fierce, then you've got to have some support there at the back office so that you can be fulfilling the care when you're growing it.
So many good thoughts, Debbie. And it's taking me back to one of your earlier comments of, I think it was your recruiter role. You had four recruiters, but then implemented the caregiver rewards and recognition system. And that was technology gone right, where it could do a lot of those manual tasks. And then you whittled down to two recruiters. So that was a perfect example of going from four people to two people with the help of technology and VAs. And I think that is the future is we use less people and technology gets better and you bring in people like virtual assistants that can supplement the technology, and that's kind of like the up and coming formula of what these operations look like. And I love how forward thinking you are, Debbie. You've been doing this for 18 years and you're always a person that I can count on to just be thinking ahead. Which of our technologies is working well, which is not, and what should we be trying? What should we be looking into? VAs, maybe 10 years ago, you never would have thought you'd have employees in the Philippines, but now you do. Like, I just love how forward thinking you are and how innovative you are and how willing you are to try new things because home care is evolving. It's not the same as it was even 5 years ago, 3 years ago. It's so different now and we have to be evolving, and you're a great example of that.
Yeah. Well, look at just doing Zoom interviews. I mean, there was a time, and there are still owners across the country that are having caregivers come into the office to do interviews, and they're not getting the numbers they need. Where if you're doing telephone and Zoom interviews, they'll show up for that. And through technology, we're able to do that now. There are many people that are doing orientation and training through technology. So not even having to have them come into the office, because every time they have to visit the office, you get cut down the numbers in half, right? So if you needed to hire 10, you've got to have 25 basically show up for your orientation. You've got to be interviewing 50. You've got to be talking to 100 applicants. Technology helps streamline all of that and put you in the best position to get as many caregivers as possible. Hopefully, you could focus on marketing also so that you get as many clients as possible.
Yeah, and you're being humble. We didn't even share all of your statistics, but in your office alone, you reduced recruiting time to hire by 40% with these VAs. You reduced canceled shifts by 25% with these VAs. Like, your numbers speak for themselves at the impact that these people are having in your organization. Talk a little bit more about helper heroes. Like you said, you tried and tested all of this in your own operation and you are pretty well known, and people just kind of have flocked to you of, wow, you're doing it, like help us do the same. And so you've had a lot of organic growth. Is Helper Heroes live, and can people reach out to you, and what's the best way for people to engage with you and the team?
Yes, we are alive. We've probably have over 50 virtual assistants placed in agencies now. A lot of those folks are working with us on 52 weeks, and we happen to see, oh wow, you're not able to get out. You're only able to get out once a week. Okay, let's resolve this. And then it's just sort of snowballed from there. We have so many folks that are flocking to us in the Philippines that we're able to, help people en masse. Huge team in the Philippines and great infrastructure to help people and onboard people as soon as possible. We could do a turnaround time in about 2 weeks. So that's from basically a discovery call to somebody placed in your office within 2 weeks. And it's $13 an hour. That's the flat rate. It's $13 an hour. We are flexible in terms of the schedules. So I think we're the only VA provider that has a minimum of 20 hours. So we can staff part-time, which is great for new owners that are trying to build their infrastructure, all the way up to as many hours as you need. We've got folks that started with 20, and we now have 5 VAs placed in their office. So they just layer on as they have the success. So yeah, we are able to schedule a discovery call. It takes about a little less than an hour for us to really uncover exactly what your needs are, and then we just go from there.
I just think this is amazing, Debbie. Again, we've talked about just the opportunity at hand here and the impact that these people can make, and just what a great opportunity. That's the word that comes to mind, I think, for home
Yes,
care businesses when the
it's a
margins are
win-win.
tight.
I love the way you captured that. It's a win-win for everyone.
It's a win-win for everyone. And what would you say to someone listening to this that may be on the fence or thinking, is it right for me? Is it not? What would you say to someone to just kind of break down that hesitation?
Look how far you've come. I mean, look at how many changes that we've experienced. We lived through COVID, so we had to adapt. And this is like the newest adaptation, I think, in streamlining our organizations and saving money, basically. I mean, in improving your margins. That's the key here. So the nice thing is with us, you're not locked into a contract. If it's something that doesn't work out for you, it's not a huge deal. We put our money where our mouth is. If you're not happy, we don't want you to do this, but give it a try. Just like anything else that you do, you've started your business, you've done this, you've done lots of things that were really, you didn't expect to do. This is one of those.
So good, Debbie. Thank you so much for joining me in the lab. I really enjoyed this conversation. I may be one of those kind of skeptics. Again, I've seen this on the rise. I've heard about these virtual assistants, but when you quantify the impact that it's had on your organization and when you've shared all of these statistics and these numbers with me and you've lived and breathed it firsthand and you've worked out all the kinks over these years, like I just think it's a great opportunity. And like you just said, people should try it and see if it works for your operation and see how your team responds to it and see the impact that it can have. And it doesn't hurt to try. So, Debbie, thanks for everything that you shared today. And I'll look forward to connecting you with owners that reach out after this conversation.
Awesome, Miriam. Bye for now.